When a person carries secrets, half-truths, or masks, they unknowingly become prisoners of their own shadows. The fear of being exposed, the anxiety of being misunderstood, the endless struggle to maintain appearances, these things slowly drain the soul. Yet, the one who has nothing to hide stands differently in the world. Their eyes are clear, their voice unshaken, and their presence light. For them, peace is not something they chase. It is something that naturally radiates from within. Such peace is not given by wealth, nor taken away by judgment. It is the peace of a human being who no longer fears the light because they have made peace with their darkness. Imagine the power of walking through life with no weight on your back, no mask on your face, no secret clawing at your conscience. That is not just freedom, it is the deepest form of strength. The hidden weight of secrets is heavier than the truth itself, because what we suppress does not vanish, it festers, grows, and takes root in the darkest corners of our being. A secret is not merely an unspoken fact, it is an energy that demands constant vigilance. It sits in the back of the mind like a shadow, reminding us with every step that something remains concealed. The effort to keep it buried is often greater than the effort it would take to face it openly. You carry it into conversations, you carry it into silence, and you carry it into the stillness of the night when no one else is watching. That hidden weight presses against the heart in moments when you should feel free, and it steals from you the simplicity of presence. The human mind is not built to thrive under the strain of concealment. It splits itself in two, the part that lives in the outer world, showing what is acceptable, and the part that guards the inner truth, trembling in the dark. Over time, this split breeds unease because authenticity is fractured. You can laugh, but it feels hollow. You can succeed, but the sweetness is tainted. The burden of what is hidden ensures that every joy is only partial, because a part of you is always afraid it might be exposed. Even in a room filled with people who love you, that hidden weight whispers that if they knew the full story, their love might vanish. This is how secrecy erodes the foundation of peace. It corrodes trust, not only with others, but with yourself. And yet, the truth, even when painful, is lighter than the lies that cover it. The truth asks for one moment of courage. The secret demands a lifetime of disguise. Think of the countless ways people exhaust themselves, rehearsing answers, creating stories, guarding doors that should not need guarding. They imagine scenarios where exposure comes crashing down, and they live through this imagined disaster over and over. But the irony is that the imagined disaster is often worse than the real one. The mind paints pictures of rejection, shame, or ruin, when in reality, what follows truth is a release so profound that it feels like a breath long held finally being exhaled. Secrets do not only weigh down the present, they also bind the future. Every step forward becomes a calculation of how to keep the hidden thing from surfacing. It limits choices, closes opportunities, and keeps life narrow, because openness would risk discovery. This is why so many people live small, careful lives, not because they lack potential, but because they cannot risk exposure. The secret rules them quietly, making decisions on their behalf, shaping their destiny without their consent. In this way, the hidden becomes a silent master, while the self becomes a servant, always adjusting to its demands. The weight of secrecy also distorts how one relates to others. Genuine connection requires honesty, but when you guard a secret, there is always a part of yourself that remains untouchable. You may be surrounded by companions, yet feel an inner loneliness that cannot be bridged, because no one has been allowed to see you fully. The fear of being truly known creates distance, and so you live half visible, never wholly embraced. This loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the absence of being fully revealed in front of them. And as long as that hidden weight is carried, peace remains elusive, for peace belongs only to the whole self, not the divided one. Masks protect the ego but destroy the soul, because every mask we wear separates us from the truth of who we are. At first, a mask seems harmless. It gives protection, it shields us from judgment, it allows us to blend into expectations. But the longer it is worn, the more it ceases to be a choice and begins to feel like a necessity. What was once a cover becomes a prison. The ego delights in this armor, for it thrives on approval and appearances, but the deeper self begins to suffocate, aching for expression. The soul longs for authenticity, for the freedom to exist without disguise, yet the mask demands silence. A mask can win us admiration, success, and even belonging, but none of these gifts satisfy for long. They feed the outer image while starving the inner reality. When applause comes, it does not feel earned. When affection is given, it does not feel secure. The mask absorbs the praise, while the true self remains unseen. This creates a quiet despair, because even in moments of achievement, a voice inside whispers, "They do not love me, they love the mask I wear." That is the tragedy of false appearances. They protect us from rejection, but they also prevent us from ever feeling truly accepted. The destruction caused by masks is subtle, yet relentless. Each time we betray our inner truth for the sake of appearances, the soul weakens. We convince ourselves that it is safer this way, that vulnerability is too costly. But in protecting ourselves from others, we lose ourselves in the process. The mask grows heavier with time, for it must constantly be maintained, adjusted, and perfected. Soon, we forget what our true face even looks like. We meet the world not as ourselves, but as a character we have crafted, and in the process, the distance between the image and the reality grows wider. The ego thrives on masks because it fears exposure. It fears that if the world were to see the unpolished, imperfect self, love and respect would vanish. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul does not crave perfection, it craves truth. It is not interested in the image but in the essence, and when the mask silences this essence, the result is emptiness. One may appear strong, yet feel hollow. One may seem confident, yet tremble in secret. This is the silent suffering of those who live behind masks. They are never truly known, and therefore never truly at peace. To wear a mask is to live in exile from one's own being. It is to betray the childlike freedom of simply existing without performance. It is to live with an audience in mind, rather than living from the depths of the heart. And while the mask may shield the ego from the sting of criticism, it exacts a far greater price. It steals the soul's natural light and replaces it with an imitation, leaving the individual divided, restless, and unable to touch the serenity that comes only from authenticity. True peace comes from self-acceptance, not perfection, because perfection is an illusion that forever recedes the closer we think we come to it. The pursuit of perfection traps us in a cycle of striving, where nothing is ever enough, where every flaw feels like failure, and every mistake feels like proof that we are unworthy. It is a chase with no destination, a mirage that keeps moving further into the distance. Self-acceptance, on the other hand, does not demand flawless achievement. It asks only for honesty, for the courage to look at oneself with all the cracks and contradictions and say, "This too is me." When you live in the pursuit of perfection, your mind becomes a battlefield. Every comparison becomes a wound, every shortcoming a chain. You measure yourself against ideals created by others, against standards that shift with culture and time, and in doing so, you lose the ground beneath your own feet. The soul cannot breathe in such an atmosphere. Perfectionism breeds anxiety, shame, and the quiet despair of never arriving. It creates the illusion that peace will come only after you have fixed everything, after you have earned enough, achieved enough, polished enough. But the day of enough never arrives, because perfection has no finish line. Self-acceptance moves in the opposite direction. It does not wait for conditions to be met. It begins in the present moment. It recognizes that being human means being unfinished, imperfect, and yet still worthy of love. In acceptance, there is space to rest, to breathe, to be. It does not mean complacency or a refusal to grow. It means you are no longer growing out of fear, but out of love. Growth that comes from self-acceptance is healthier than growth that comes from self-rejection, because it is not poisoned by the belief that you must first become someone else in order to deserve peace. There is a quiet power in looking at your own flaws and not turning away, to acknowledge your wounds, your limitations, your contradictions without shame. That is where freedom begins. Peace does not come when the flaws disappear. Peace comes when you no longer see them as evidence of unworthiness. What once felt like weakness becomes a reminder of your humanity, a thread connecting you to every other imperfect soul walking this earth. This recognition dissolves the loneliness of striving, because it reminds you that imperfection is the common ground of all existence. Perfection seeks to erase difference, to polish life into something smooth and unblemished, but self-acceptance embraces the rough edges. It allows for mistakes without condemning the self, for struggles without declaring defeat. It teaches that your worth is not conditional, that it does not rise and fall with performance. This is why peace cannot be found in perfection. It is too fragile, too dependent on circumstances that will always shift. Peace grounded in acceptance is unshakable, because it is rooted in truth, and truth does not crumble when judged. It simply is. To embrace your flaws is to silence fear, because fear thrives in the hidden places where we reject ourselves. Every flaw we deny, every weakness we conceal, becomes a weapon fear can use against us. It whispers that if others knew this about us, they would turn away. It insists that our imperfection makes us unworthy, that our cracks must remain unseen. And so long as we resist our flaws, fear has power, for it guards the gates of our own acceptance. But when we turn toward those very flaws, when we allow them into the light, fear loses its grip, because there is nothing left to threaten us with. A flaw is not a sentence, it is a sign of life. To be human is to be incomplete, to carry contradictions, to stumble, and to rise again. The attempt to hide these truths creates a fragile existence, where every step is taken with caution, as though the ground might collapse beneath us. We live in fear of exposure, of judgment, of not being enough. But when we embrace our flaws, the ground steadies. We no longer live as fugitives from ourselves. What was once a source of shame becomes a source of strength, because it has been accepted as part of the whole. Fear feeds on the illusion that perfection is required for love, belonging, and respect. Yet the reality is the opposite. People are drawn not to flawless masks, but to the rawness of authenticity. The moment you embrace your flaws, you allow others to see themselves in you, to recognize their own struggles reflected back. What once isolated you now becomes a bridge. By no longer hiding from yourself, you make it safe for others to stop hiding too. This is how fear is silenced, not by erasing imperfection, but by embracing it so fully that it no longer carries shame. When you accept your flaws, you also free yourself from the exhausting burden of control. No longer do you need to curate every word, every action, every appearance to maintain an image of faultlessness. You begin to live with openness, unafraid of the cracks, unafraid of mistakes, unafraid of being seen as you truly are. This openness creates a space where peace can finally breathe. the energy once spent in suppression and disguise is released, and in its place grows a quiet strength that fear cannot touch. Fear cannot survive in the presence of truth. The moment you accept yourself fully, fear has no leverage, no ground to stand on. It can no longer threaten exposure, because you have already exposed yourself to yourself. This is why embracing flaws is not weakness, but liberation. It is the act of saying, "Yes, this is me, and I am still whole." In that affirmation, fear is silenced, and the self finds the courage to stand unshaken, not because it is flawless, but because it is free. Transparency is not weakness, it is unshakable strength, because it takes far more courage to stand uncovered than to hide behind layers of pretense. The world often confuses vulnerability with fragility, but in truth, only the strong can afford to be transparent. To show yourself as you are, to admit mistakes, to reveal struggles, to share truths without disguise, is to declare that you are no longer governed by fear of judgment. It is to stand firm in the knowledge that your worth does not collapse when others see your imperfections. Weakness seeks cover. It hides behind masks, carefully curates appearances, and constructs walls so that no flaw can be revealed. But these defenses are brittle. They shatter at the first hint of exposure, and the person behind them lives in constant tension, always guarding, always performing. Transparency, on the other hand, has nothing to guard. There is no fear of being found out because there is nothing concealed. This creates a strength that cannot be shaken by rumor, suspicion, or criticism, because all that could be uncovered has already been acknowledged. True transparency is not about oversharing or placing every detail of one's life before others. It is about integrity. It is the alignment between inner reality and outer expression. When what you show matches what you are, you live in freedom. Your words carry weight because they come from truth. Your presence commands respect, not through force, but through authenticity. People trust those who are transparent because they sense there is no hidden agenda, no deception beneath the surface. This trust is a power far greater than the fragile approval gained through masks. Transparency also dismantles shame. Shame survives only in the dark, whispering that certain parts of you must remain hidden or you will be rejected. But when you bring those parts into the open, when you own them without apology, shame loses its power. What once felt like chains becomes a source of connection, because others see their own struggles reflected in your openness. This is the paradox of transparency. By revealing your humanity, you gain not rejection but respect, not isolation but closeness. Strength is often misunderstood as hardness, as the refusal to bend, as the ability to carry secrets and pains without ever letting them show. But this kind of strength is brittle, for it demands suppression. Real strength is fluid. It is the ability to reveal, to admit, to let light shine through without fear of what might be seen. Transparency is the unshakable strength of one who is no longer divided within themselves, one who has nothing to conceal and therefore nothing to fear. It is not weakness but the deepest form of resilience, for it cannot be broken by exposure, since exposure has already been embraced. The one who has nothing to hide walks in freedom beyond judgment, because they are no longer imprisoned by the fear of being discovered. So much of human anxiety comes from the constant calculation of appearances, what to reveal, what to suppress, how to fit into expectations without exposing what feels unacceptable. This inner tension binds people, turning life into a performance staged for the approval of others. But the moment you stand without concealment, that performance ends. You walk unburdened because no one holds a secret over you, no rumor has the power to destabilize you, and no opinion can reduce your worth. Judgment loses its sting when there is nothing left to uncover. Criticism may come, but it cannot shake the foundation of one who has embraced their truth. Rejection may appear, but it cannot wound the soul that has already accepted itself. This is the freedom that arises when nothing is hidden. You are not living to protect an image, but to live as you are. You may be misunderstood, you may even be opposed, but you are no longer at war with yourself. That inner alignment makes you untouchable in a way that no external armor can. To live with nothing to hide is to step into a rare kind of power. It is not the power of domination, of control, or of force, but the power of presence. Others feel it when they are near you, a steadiness, a clarity, a peace that is not easily disturbed. It comes from knowing that you cannot be blackmailed by your own secrets, nor chained by the fear of exposure. You move through the world with a lightness because your life is not divided between the seen and the unseen. Everything stands together as one whole. This kind of freedom also reshapes relationships. When you have nothing to hide, your connections are no longer clouded by suspicion, pretense, or guardedness. You meet others openly, allowing them to encounter you as you are. Such honesty inspires honesty in return. Trust becomes natural, not forced, because there are no hidden agendas waiting to emerge. Even when others judge, their judgment falls flat, because it cannot touch the truth you already own. Walking beyond judgment is not about escaping the opinions of others. It is about transcending their hold on you. People will always judge, always project, always see through the lens of their own fears and desires. But if you have nothing to hide, their words cannot imprison you. You are no longer performing to escape their disapproval. You are living from the center of your being, free in a way that few ever allow themselves to be. This is the freedom that belongs only to the one who has chosen truth over pretense, openness over disguise, and peace over fear.